Today's lesson is Lesson 17, Sugar Plantations. You have no doubt enjoyed baking or sweets at some point in your life. Candies, cakes, cookies, and other confection are the most often made with refined sugar. You can buy this sugar in bags in the grocery stores, often for very little money. Have you ever wondered where this granulated sweetness comes from? Most of the sugar you purchase in the store comes from one or of two sources, sugar cane or sugar beets. Sugar cane grows in tropical and subtropical climates. It has been cultivated for more than 4,000 years on the continent of Asia, where it is native species of grass. For over 2,000 years, this plant has been used to make sugar for human consumption. However, this sweet secret was kept within the confines of Asia for centuries. Although some believe the ancient Greeks and Romans had sugar, it wasn't until the 11th century that sugar was imported to Europe, and this sweet treat was discovered by Europeans during the Crusades. While some African countries may have discovered sugar as early as the 10th century, it was the imports to Europe that began the worldwide distribution of it. As Europeans ventured west across the Atlantic Ocean, they brought sugar cane with them. They discovered that the tropical and subtropical regions found in the Americas were perfectly suited to growing the increasingly popular crop. Eventually, European colonization influenced sugar production in some African nations as well. The popularity of sugar cane spread rapidly as people discovered the addictive, delicious treat they could add to their food and drinks. Sugar beets can be grown in much cooler climates than sugar cane. While beets have been eaten as a vegetable for centuries, the first time sugar was extracted from a sugar beet was in the mid-18th century. By the early 19th century, there were sugar beet factories popping up in various European countries. Instead of importing sugar from tropical locations, they discovered they could produce it locally. Today, many European nations still produce beet sugar. Growing sugar. When you think of grass, you probably envision the green carpet of your lawn, or maybe even the long grasses found in a field of hay before it is time for the first cut. However, most grasses don't make a habit of growing 20 feet tall. Sugar cane is a tropical grass that grows anywhere from 10 to 20 feet tall. It takes a full year from planting until it is ready to harvest. Like many types of grasses, it is perennial, so a farmer can often get several crops from one planting before the ground must be worked again and replanted. Sugar cane loves hot, moist temperatures and will not grow in climates that are not hot or wet enough. Not warm or wet enough. The hot button topic is sugar plantations in the United States and the Caribbean were originally worked by slaves. The difficult manual labor on a sugar plantation required a lot of manpower. In a time when slave ownership was common, enslaved people worked long, back-breaking hours in the hot sun. When slavery was outlawed, American plantation owners were required to pay their workers. But that requirement did not change how hard the work was for the people working in the field. Today, the most large-scale sugar farms in the United States, employ large machinery, and the workload is significantly reduced from what it once was. However, much of the sugar cane grown in other areas of the world are not grown on farms with modern machinery to rely on for harvesting. There are still many people who do the same intense labor of harvesting by hand that was common in the U.S. Many of the people who work on sugar plantations in developing nations do not earn a fair wage. Like coffee, you can look for sugar that is either domestically produced or that is marked fair trade, so you know you are supporting farmers who treat their employees well. Unlike grain crops, legumes, or hay, sugarcane can be harvested in wet or dry conditions. This is good news for the sugar producers. Sugar is often grown in areas with high humidity. If it had to completely dry before being harvested, the farmer might never get their crop in the fields. Sugar beets are grown very differently than sugarcane, and they require a very different climate. Beets are an annual root vegetable that must be planted each year. While sugarcane requires hot, wet climates to produce good quality sugar, sugar beets do best in cooler weather. They produce the highest sugar contents when the last part of the growing season is relatively cold. Compared to the year-long growing period of sugarcane, sugar beets mature within 200 days of sowing. A fully mature sugar beetroot can be well over 4 pounds. They are harvested in the late fall, just before the ground freezes, by machines that pull and take the top off the plant. In some countries, sugar beets are genetically modified so herbicides do not affect them. Equipment. Sugarcane farms in the United States use large machines to help plant and harvest their cane. When the crop is ready to be harvested, a machine on tracks drives through the field. The crop is cut close to the ground, leaving just a few inches of the stalk for next year's harvest to grow from. Tracks are used instead of tires on these machines because sugarcane is often harvested in fields that a tractor's tires could get stuck. As the machine cuts down the stalk, it also rips off the leaves and chops the cane up into small chunks that are easier to deal with. They are then tossed in the machine into a trailer or a truck for transport. Many other large sugar-producing nations employ people to plant and cut the cane down by hand. Their most important piece of machinery is a good sharp machete and a hat to keep off the sun. The cane is cut to manageable lengths and bundles are made for transport to the sugar mill. Sugar beet farming requires different equipment than farming sugarcane. On large farms, the seeds are sown with their drills that plant each one at an exact depth, approximately automatically spacing the rows about 3 inches apart. Fertilizer and herbicides are both applied throughout the growing season to help the beets grow and discourage weed growth. Storage and processing. All plants use photosynthesis to produce sugar so the plant can grow and thrive. But not all plants are sweet when you eat them, and certainly not just any plant is used to make sugar. Both sugar cane and sugar beets store the sugar they created. Sugar cane stores it in the thick stalks of grass that grow so tall. Sugar beets store in the roots that grows. Sugar beets store in it the root that grows below the ground. Sugar cane is processed quickly so the best sugar is extracted from it. The first stop for freshly harvested sugar cane is the sugar mill. Here, the raw sugar is extracted from the stalks and sent to the refinery. When sugar cane is crushed, it releases its sweet juice into a pure raw form. This juice is boiled down to produce sucrose, which the store sells as sugar, and backstrap molasses. Once processed and refined, it is sold as white granulated sugar, powdered sugar, also known as confectioner's sugar or icing sugar, and brown sugar. Brown sugar gets its slightly sticky texture from its molasses content. The process of refining sugarcane also produces useful byproducts. Some factories use the remaining plant material called bagasse as fuel to help power the mills, and some even produce more power than the factories uses. In other places, there have also been steps taken towards using sugarcane as a fuel source in creating ethanol. When sugar beets are harvested, they are taken to factories and piled high while they wait for the factory to deal with them. Because they are grown in the ground, it is important to make sure that the beets are clean before the sugar is extracted. The beets are washed. Damaged beets, as well as debris, are removed before the beets are thinly sliced so the sugar can be released. Once sliced, they are put into a diffuser where hot water helps extract the sugar from the root. The pulp is squeezed until all the juice comes out. The juice is then treated to clean and remove impurities. Once it has been cleaned and filtered, the juice is boiled until most of the water evaporates away. The process continues while cleaning the juice and syrup to make sure that there are no impurities. Eventually, the syrup is crystallized into the sugar that you are familiar with through a process of spinning the syrup quickly while drying it. Molasses is also a byproduct of refining sugar from sugar beets. Sugar is a common ingredient today in many prepackaging and refined food. In fact, it is so common that it has become a health crisis in many places. Rising incidences of type 2 diabetes and other conditions, including obesity, heart disease, chronic inflammation, skin conditions, tooth decay, fatty liver, and a whole host of other conditions, have been linked to an unhealthy diet with too much sugar. In the 21st century, the average American adult eats about 22 teaspoons of refined sugar each day. This number does not count natural sugars like those found in fruit, but other sugars added to foods and drinks. In Canada, that number has been even higher in recent decades, with some reports of up to 26 teaspoons each day. Many health organizations recommend that no more than 9 teaspoons of sugar be added to the diet each day. This has proven to be a difficult recommendation to accept for many Canadians and Americans, while plenty of other nations around the world hit these targets easily and even eat less sugar. In India, the country that many credit with learning how to process sugarcane into sugar, the daily added consumption is about a teaspoon. Many European nations are much closer to hitting the target as well. Asian and African nations, in general, are the lowest end of sugar consumption in the world, despite typically having near-perfect growing conditions for sugarcane. Sugar can be a delightful addition to your diet. Most people believe that a sweet treat every once in a while won't hurt you. However, it is important to remember that eating too much sugar is not good for you. It can be a challenge to learn to enjoy food without added sugar if you have already eaten a lot of it. The lesson is much easier to learn when you are young than when you are older and more set in your ways. Learning to enjoy sweets in the form of fresh fruit and limiting your refined sugar intake to the occasional treat can be a start to a healthy lifestyle that will serve you well the rest of your life. Hands-on activity. Look on the labels of food you eat to see how much sugar you consume on a regular basis. Discuss with your family if there's a good thing or a bad thing. Why do you think people love to eat sugar so much? This concludes lesson 17 for today.